Good day and good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to have you back in another episode of The Gold Standard. My name is Jorge Enrique Bravo. I am your host for this podcast, coming to you mid-August, and it's been a wonderful year so far. It's a pleasure to have our guests on these conversations with us every week. So today my special guest is Mike Sullivan. He's CEO of BAIE, or BAIE Minerals, and they run a company that is taking toxic waste, the toxic tailings of a asbestos mine in the Newfoundland coast, and they're turning roughly 90% of this waste into decarbonized cement, magnesium, fertilizer, and even carbon credits. Today we get into why this waste that nobody seems to pay attention to is actually more valuable than gold and copper. And we also cover what it really takes to turn what is environmental liability, what seems like a threat to the environment, into a sustainable resource. So we covered 3 points. We covered why mine waste is actually a hidden opportunity. Mining companies that carry this cleanup as a massive cost with zero revenue, this company BAIE Minerals, they actually see opportunity and know how to manage it. The next point that we covered is actually the large return on investment that most investors are overlooking in this mine waste. Cement, fertilizer, carbon removal are actually bigger markets in some spaces than copper and gold, and BAIE Minerals is able to reach them with a low-cost, low-energy process. Finally, how to turn this pollution into a climate asset. So detoxifying this hazardous waste into safe feedstock and selling net zero cement and decarbonized credits, we're basically taking a completely unsustainable practice and making it sustainable. We close on the idea where everyone sees the real edge, seeing the same challenge of liability in the waste, but BAIE Minerals is actually seeing this as a critical resource. And finally, if you'd like to learn more about business insight, best practices, and hear the conversations with the leaders shaping modern technology and innovation, please follow the Gold Standard podcast. We have weekly talks with experts in the field who are driving this industry forward. Up next is my conversation with Mike Sullivan. It's a pleasure to have you all. Thank you all for joining here, and please stay safe. It is an absolute pleasure to introduce here today with me Mike. He is CEO of BAIE Minerals and BAIE Technologies. It's a pleasure to have you here, Mike. Thank you for being here. And we already got through the progress on the update. So I'd like to ask you, your background is in resource extraction and waste management. How did you end up looking at mine waste as the opportunity in this industry?
Well, I started out in the resource extraction side, oil and gas. And the resource extraction sector is a very large waste generator. And so we started looking at, ways of, developing a business model that can, turn the waste into value. So extracting from oil and gas, there's various waste products that you can derive. But about 12 years ago, I started looking at something bigger, noticing that the mining industry is a very large waste generator, but they never clean up the mine waste until end of life of the mine. And so what ends up happening is, in a lot of cases, it's end of life of the company. And so these legacy giant mine waste piles, like you see behind me, they get sometimes orphaned and abandoned, or they're going to perpetual care and maintenance. So we started looking at this as, why go looking for buried treasure when it's hiding in plain sight? A lot of the minerals that are in here aren't the original target of what the mining operation was. So a lot of them are industrial minerals, and then there's small amounts of, the critical minerals. In this case, we can turn most of this pile behind us into cement, construction material, or fertilizer. And there's a little bit of nickel, manganese, cobalt in here, but it's actually commercial. So what we started to do was scour the landscape, and we found, surprisingly, lots of these are available. Now, in Canada, there's 11,000 of these orphaned and abandoned mine sites that are registered. In the US, there's over 49. But in larger places where they've been mining for hundreds of years, like in Africa, there's literally billions and hundreds of billions of tons of this available. So we use this mined waste as free feedstock. Yeah. And it's a great value proposition, because you know, permitting is easy. It's essentially de-risked. It's a form of what they call environmental injustice. Mining companies take the profit, leave the waste. The community has to wear it. The community has the problem. If there's any toxicity in the waste, it creates health and safety problems. But also reputationally, towns can be ruined because a toxic town reputation. So mining companies, legislatively now, they have to fund the cleanup of the mine site before they even start the mine, or they have to have some bonding. So you have large companies that are able to do that, and it creates a barrier of entry for smaller companies. But the mining industry is becoming highly, there's a huge demand for minerals, to go into the clean economy. We're looking for copper but the extraction grades are getting smaller and smaller. So as an example, copper, the ore grade is less than 1%. So that means that more than 99% of what they produce is waste in a waste pile. So if they're producing hundreds of millions of tons of copper over decades, they're creating billions of tons of waste behind. And we'd like to think that we're a solution provider for the industry. Now, we go after hard to abate, the more challenging stuff. And it becomes an opportunity for us because our technology is actually a bit of a game changer. We use sono electro processing. So we use electrochemical processing, but we treat everything with a sonification that is basically using water as a cavitation to bust particles apart. So we come up with a technology that is lower cost, lower energy. So we don't use strong acids. We don't use high temperatures to break the particles apart. In a lot of cases, they're already fairly communized. They're very small particles to begin with, so they're easy to work with. So we'd like to think that we're a solution provider for the industry for hard to abate waste.
Sono-electro processing. Last time we spoke, could you walk us a little bit through this solution? You mentioned you're taking two different waste materials and making them basically cancel out each other. How does this work?
You need to have altered pH or altered conditions, shear conditions. So what we do is we essentially use brine water as a process for changing the pH, changing the environment. A lot of what is happening is some of these acids are more valuable than the products that you're extracting because you got supply chain issues that are happening now globally. So what we do is we have an on-site on-site solution where we take brine water, which is either pH altered, it's got salt, and we use it electrochemically to alter the environment, break the particles apart. But what they do is they separate into as they call it, the gang. Like this is the gang, this is the waste material. But what we do is we separate the less useful products out and concentrate the more valuable products.
The part that surprised me about this is that you don't buy your own acid. You actually you guys harvest it from the mine drainage nearby, and that's how you're using a separate bit of waste as already part of the solution. How did you come up with that idea?
Well, is that a necessity? What ended up happening is the price of acid, started to escalate, and it's become like sulfuric acid now has been basically weaponized, in this global war, between the Gulf state countries and China. So sulfuric acid now has become more valuable than a lot of the minerals and fertilizers that they're making. So what we came up with a process where we don't need to buy industrial grade acid, which is really, really strong and very, very expensive, because acid mine drainage that comes out of the mine waste is a low-grade sulfuric acid. We just purify it, but our process beneficates the waste in a way that we don't need to use the strong acid. Now we just have to alter the pH to polish it off. So what we found was, we take two waste streams and turn them into multiple value propositions where we can make, cement, we can extract battery metals, we can make fertilizer. And it's the ultimate waste to value proposition because what's one person's waste is another man's treasure. But when it's so readily available, and it has, stuff in it's this valuable.
I'm sure that they're seeing it from a social perspective in this industry, in mining, and especially with communities, well, especially in the mining industry. It can be difficult to adopt novel processes or new things. Everyone wants to be the first to be fourth or third. Everyone does not want to be the first to be first. So when someone hears sulfuric acid, asbestos mine, and it can sound extremely dangerous. Have you seen any challenges on adoption of this sort of technology? How do you get a community to see this as an opportunity when normally they've seen mining as a threat to the community?
Because what we deal with is hazardous waste and hard to abate waste. So we take these situations. So you have to have a high safety program. So your safety program has to be bulletproof. You have to be able to have, like, what are the risks? So you can't have any airborne products. So everything has to be wet. The toxicity is dry airborne respiratory toxicity. The acid mine drainage is a wet fluid. So you have the two. One of them is a dangerous wet fluid. One of them is a dangerous dry fluid. Now, you're basically combining the two of them to offset both of those risks. So it's very symbiotic, it's very synergistic, and it makes the value proposition high because now you have huge cost savings.
That is incredible. So not just eliminating what is like the airborne dangers of it, but also the wet fluids. You're combining both of them to reduce the risk from all sides altogether. You mentioned about how some of these byproducts or these other chemicals that are left in the waste can be commercial. So I'd love to ask you a little bit about that. Most investors are looking to chase the next gold asset or the next copper mine, right? Why should someone fund a brownfield waste to minerals project instead of a gold or copper mine?
Yeah, very good point. So there are more industrial minerals in here, and so the industrial minerals you make cement. The biggest mining companies in the world are cement companies. It's the most widely used product, but it's very carbon intensive. So we can extract a decarbonized, a net zero cement. We can make a cement or a supplementary cementitious material. Our technology can get 90% of what's in here into a marketable sales product that has a high demand market. So we extract, a fertilizer, we extract a cement, we can carbon mineralize it, we can sequester CO2, because the two main products that are in here is magnesium oxide, which is it's a bit of an opaque market. It's not something that's publicly traded, but it's widely used. It has lots of uses in cement, in nutraceutical, pharmaceutical, agricultural, construction materials, fire suppressant. It's widely used in the smart materials and chemical space. The other high concentration particle that's in here is silica. So when we extract the silica, it can go into the cement industry, or it can go into other markets that use a precipitated silica. So we get 90% of what's in here into a saleable product. But these aren't the products that grab the headlines. Everybody's looking for copper, they're looking for gold. But the markets that we sell into are bigger markets. Cement and concrete, much bigger market than any of those other markets. fertilizer markets, widely used, and we get a little bit of battery metal out of here, but we have enough to be commercial. So it's a waste of value proposition that we don't have to mine it. It's already been de-risked. It's all the heavy lifting has been done. And so it makes it a high value proposition because we have ready free feedstock to go into these markets. So it makes our margins very high.
Yes, it does. So about margins, I mean, yeah, of course, as you can see in behind your back, those are not mountains. That is the tailings. That is
Waste.
the minerals, the waste. Yes. So it's above ground. We don't need to go and do well, I guess, and this is part of my next question. Like, we don't need to go and do more geological reports on the drilling. We don't need to do 43-101s. We don't need to go and do like, what would you say is like the true challenges for someone who's looking to take this on as a project? Is it the permitting? There's no exploration needed, is there?
Yeah, the permitting is quite easy because it's brownfield, and usually, your permitting, your exploration cycle is long, and your permitting cycle is long, and then your construction cycle is long. We avoid any of that. The permitting here, it's a brownfield. So brownfield permits are very fast tracked because you don't have to cut any trees down. You don't have to do any environmental disturbance or build roads. It's already happened. It's basically a high value reclamation. So what you're really doing here is you're taking waste and you're progressively reclaiming it, because every ton that you sell into the cement market or fertilizer market is one less ton of waste. So you're taking it off the books. So if a company has an asset retirement obligation of hundreds of millions of dollars, in a lot of cases, that's a real cost to them, but you could turn that into $1 billion resource, but it's not their core business, and they don't get value. Mining companies don't get value for it. A gold company only gets value for the gold it can book, not for the cement it can book or sell. So this creates a high value reclamation opportunity for companies that have large asset retirement obligations, real liabilities on their books. And so they might have like I said, I'll use an example, $100 million worth of asset cleanup liability, and costs are escalating. That could be higher than that. It's a cost to them, has no revenue. For us, it has no cost and high revenue. So it's the exact opposite. So it's a very symbiotic relationship that you can have with end of life mines.
For someone who into this market that you're talking about, what is the process? I mean, is there a sort of refinery that is built in nearby the mine? Are you selling concentrates, or does this have to be like some
No.
sort of like processed?
So it's a good point. We make the end product, except for the nickel, manganese, cobalt. We'll make a concentrate and sell it, and it's at the end of our process. So what we do first is we detoxify this mine waste, make it into safe feedstock for processing. Then our process activates and enhances the separation of minerals and metals. So a metal will be the magnesium and the nickel, and the minerals will be the silica. And because they're not close to each other, they're easy to separate. And when things are really close together, you got to go through a fine tuning, and it's hard to separate those minerals from each other. But because we have a wide range, now we have a divalent mineral called magnesium, and it can be stripped out, it can be activated and separated quite easily. So we end up with a product, and then we'd end up refining it. So does a market want 95%? Do they want 98%? Do they want 99.9% pure magnesium to go into the market? And then the silica is into the cement industry as a supplementary cementitious material. So it's pozzolanic, which means it could act like a cement in the right environment. And it's decarbonized. I got to say, it's surprisingly easy, but the thing is, it's the source product that has everybody the opportunity is available because this is considered to be toxic waste and it's hard to abate. But as long as we have a wet process, never toxicity and hazards are never a risk. We have clearance from occupational health and safety. We have clearance from environment, pollution control. In fact, we're mitigating or removing a pollution in this process.
For those who are looking for like chain of custody or like origin of the product, where it's coming from, some experts say that we're in the start of a next commodity super cycle. And when you say that the cement and fertilizer industry is just as or even bigger than what is a gold or copper industry, how does that even look like? Is the industry really that much larger than gold and copper?
It is. So cement's the most widely used product on the planet after water. So you look at some of these markets like iron ore or whatever, it's as big as, maybe even bigger than the oil and gas market. These markets are separate. There's no convergence. If you're a copper company or a gold company, that's what you do. You don't make cement. So what we do is we take from the balance sheet of a mining company that has a large reclamation obligation, huge cost to them, no value. On our books, it has huge value and no cost. It's the exact opposite. So it's just a different way, turning it upside down and looking at things differently. And the mining industry, their shareholders, a gold company, is not going to give them value for cement. It's just not going to happen. So for us, it's a huge value proposition. And for the mining company, it's a huge value proposition as well, because they get to deleverage their books. It's a profit for them.
At what stage are you in right now? Are you doing offtake agreements? Are you already selling from like commodity trades? Are you guys already selling this product, or are you guys in production?
So we're not in production. We're doing a pilot demonstration plant. The pilot demonstration plant is permitted. It allows us to get enough product to get into customers' hands so we can get the offtake contracts. So we have MOUs and letters of intent with potential customers, but until they have products. Now, a big company, cement company, will have its own lab. So they want the product to test it, stress test it. They might want it modified. They might want a different spec product that we would make. So it's a little bit of an iterative process to get an offtake contract, but the path is to have a pilot demonstration plant and then go either modular or full scale into commercialization, depending on your offtake contracts.
In terms of where things are right now, what would you say is the biggest challenge that's in front of you in terms of getting to the next step?
Part of it's funding, and part of it is the product that we're dealing with, as you said, the source of origin. So it comes from toxic waste. So there's a lot of markets that just are no-go zone. So cement's one of them where a lot of the cement is going into the ground. It's not going into a consumer product. So there's a big market for wind turbines, need giant concrete foundations. It's in the ground, it holds the wind turbine up. And there's almost as much cement in the ground as you see in the tower above. So it's a very, very big market for cement, and it's going back into the ground. The other one is underground cement paste backfill. So a lot of the mines, if they're underground, they need to cement paste backfill for subsidence, for disposal, and so they need a paste or a binder that goes back in. So most of the markets that we go into in the cement industry are non-consumer markets because of the source product. Fertilizer markets aren't, you're putting it back into the ground. You're not, and of course, it's probably going to become the biggest market there is because you got to feed the planet, and you need fertilizer to do that.
So that's true sustainability. In terms of, people can say mining's not sustainable because we're taking stuff out of the ground and not returning it. But at this, it seems like in that aspect, we truly are returning it and using it to replant or to replant what it is that we took out. So that's beautiful.
The other big market, and I didn't mention it, is because this material that you're looking at behind me is highly alkalinic. It is very, it has a high affinity for carbon mineralization. So the carbon removal market highly prizes this material to draw down carbon from the atmosphere. So the carbon markets, as they evolve, are looking for products like this from mine waste. Now, one of the things you have to do is you have to detoxify before you do that. And that's part of our process. But the carbon removal market and the carbon credit market is, looking for biodiversity improvement. So when you can take something that's a pollutant and turn it into a climate asset, it's highly financeable as well.
Yeah, and in terms of financeable, um, right now within you and right now within your company and within your how are you guys finding the right investors or partners for something like this niche? Are you guys doing conferences, word of mouth? Are you guys doing outreach? Where do these conversations normally begin for you?
So they begin with one with customers. So you need a customer traction. So you're right, conferences, whether you're in, a cement decarbonization conference, you're in a technology conference, clean tech, climate tech, deep tech. The technology industry this is hardware driven. So we don't make a software. We're not AI or data driven, which is where a lot of the money has evolved to. So this is going back to, sort of a basics. So customer traction, you're right. It's outreach programs, it's conferences. There are large companies, corporates that are in the mineral space that want to be decarbonized. They have giant balance sheets, all the cement companies, the nickel companies, the steel companies that are looking for this product, the fertilizer companies, and they all have corporate VCs. Those are the big targets.
So there are cement decarbonization conferences then. That seems like just the right place where you guys need to be at.
It's a big motion, a big movement right now, because, they're saying that cement is responsible for 8% of all the carbon emissions in the world. It's very, very big carbon footprint. So they continue to look for decarbonization methods, technologies, or sources of product that will decarbonize. Now in Europe, they have a carbon border adjustment mechanism, and it's really impacting the cement industry. You can't import cement that has a high carbon footprint. So that's something that the EU has, and it's going to be attracted more globally.
You guys would be definitely qualified suppliers for European markets then.
Yes. So we're right on Tidewater. European market's big target for us. But and you have a lot of tariffs, tariff wars that are going on, and a lot of that is the U.S. is trying to protect its own industry. But what that's doing is making an opportunity for us, because we can sell into carbon-free markets, tariff-free markets, where we have, because we're closer. Our export point is closer to the European market than the eastern seaboard of the U.S. So both markets are open to us. One of them is, tariff-free and looking for carbon-free markets, products.
That's really refreshing to hear that. Well, not just that there are conferences, but there are companies that are truly actually worried about that 8% that is basically going into the atmosphere. Like that's good to hear that companies are truly looking to eliminate that risk or eliminate that waste.
Yeah, and the mining industry is a big carbon generator. So 5 years ago, people wouldn't have given it a second thought. Now it's the first thought that people have. getting away from fossil fuel. And one of the problems with the mining industry is that, everything is run off diesel. Well, diesel prices have skyrocketed. So it's marginalizing the mining industry. So electrification, it's front of mind with everyone.
If you were able to explain what BAIE Minerals does in 30 seconds or less, what would you say?
Okay, well, we're a technology company and a circular economy innovator, and we transform mine waste into decarbonized minerals and carbon credits.
Absolutely incredible. And as you mentioned, that's a big topic right now, especially in the cement and fertilizer industry. We truly are trying to take this industry to a more sustainable place, and that seems exactly what it is that we guys are doing.
It wasn't how we started out. When we started out, that wasn't the front line or the headline. What we have is we were a bit ahead of our time. It was a waste to value proposition. We looked at this and said, we could turn this into money, into a big pile of money. We can create benefits for the community, and we can also solve a problem, which is pollution.
Oh yes, that is the problem, truly. So, if someone wanted to learn more about you or get involved, someone in the community or in the industry, what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, we have a website. It's BAIEminerals.com. But we also, I have I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find us on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of information there. And we attend a lot of conferences, carbon conferences, cement conferences, mining conferences.
It was an absolute pleasure. It's incredible the work that you guys are doing. I'm really excited to hear more and see how it moves forward. So I thank you so much for being here with me today, Mike. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having us. And I'm a fan of your podcast, and I look forward to seeing ours.